She was just a teacher's aide making $11 an hour, and he was the man Chicago's entire underworld answered to. But when Lily saw a hospital orderly raise his hand against a frightened little boy, she didn't stop to calculate the cost. She stepped between them, shielding a child she had never met with nothing but her body and her nerve. She expected to be removed from the building. She expected to be screamed at. What she didn't expect was for the man standing in the shadows at the end of the corridor to go very, very still. She didn't expect the city's most feared crime lord to step into the fluorescent light, look at her like she was something he hadn't seen in a long time, and change everything, because that little boy wasn't just a patient. He was the only family Luca Caruso had left in the world, and nobody put their hands on what belonged to Luca Caruso. The waiting room of Mercy General Hospital's pediatric wing smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee, and the particular kind of dread that comes from sitting still for too long. Lily Marsh had been there for 4 hours. She sat in a hard plastic chair with her coat still buttoned, a paper cup of cold tea balanced on her knee, watching the double doors at the end of the hall like they might open and deliver good news. They hadn't yet. Her younger brother, Tommy, was somewhere on the other side of those doors. 17 years old, asthma attack, complicated by the fact that their mother's insurance had lapsed 3 weeks ago and Lily hadn't figured out how to fix it yet. The admitting nurse had been kind but clear. They would stabilize him. After that, everything else was a conversation. Lily knew what that meant. She pressed her fingernails into her palm and watched a woman across the room try to keep a toddler entertained with a crumpled granola bar wrapper. She watched a teenage boy slumped against his father's shoulder. She watched the orderly at the intake desk, a heavy-set man named Gary, according to his badge, grow increasingly impatient with the line forming in front of him. And then she watched Gary turn his attention to a little boy sitting alone near the vending machines. The boy was maybe 8 years old. Dark hair, dark eyes, a navy blue sweater with a small hole at the elbow. He was sitting very straight, the way children sit when they're trying to make themselves smaller and better behaved at the same time. There was a coloring book open in his lap, but he wasn't coloring. He was staring at the vending machine like he was trying not to cry. He had knocked over the small stack of magazines on the table beside him, just bumped them with his elbow, a quiet little avalanche of old issues of People and Better Homes and Gardens fanning across the linoleum floor, an accident so minor that Lily had already forgotten it by the time Gary pushed back from the desk and walked over. "Pick those up," Gary said. His voice carried across the room. The boy scrambled off the chair immediately, dropping to his knees to gather the magazines. His hands were shaking. "This isn't your living room." "He's trying," Lily said. She hadn't planned to say it. It came out before she'd finished deciding to speak. Gary looked at her. "Excuse me?" Lily stood up. She was not a tall woman. She was 5'4" in her good boots, 31 years old, wearing a green wool coat that had been her mother's before it was hers. She did not look like someone who started confrontations in hospital waiting rooms. She did it anyway. "He knocked over some magazines. He's picking them up." "You don't need to stand over him like that." "Ma'am, I suggest you mind your own. He's a child," Lily said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "He's sitting alone in a hospital and he's scared and he knocked over some magazines. That's it. That's the whole situation." Gary's face went an unpleasant shade of red. He took a step toward her, his thick finger leveling in her direction. "Lady, you're about 5 seconds from being asked to leave this building. Remove your finger from her face." The voice came from the far end of the corridor. Low, unhurried, the kind of voice that didn't need volume because it had never once in its life needed to repeat itself. Everyone in the waiting room heard it. Everyone went quiet. Luca Caruso walked toward them the way water moves downhill. Inevitable, without wasted motion. He was tall, broad through the shoulders in a charcoal wool coat that fit him like it had been cut specifically for his body, which it probably had. His hair was dark and slightly too long, his jaw unshaved by 2 or 3 days. His eyes were the color of old bronze, and they were fixed on Gary with the kind of attention that made people reconsider their choices. He stopped beside the little boy who had stood up and pressed himself quietly against Luca's leg. "This is my nephew," Luca said, looking at Gary, not explaining, stating. Gary's bluster collapsed like a paper bag in rain. "Mr. Caruso, I wasn't aware that. Are you aware now?" "Yes, sir." "Good." Luca's gaze moved to Lily. He looked at her for a moment, a real look, unhurried, like he was reading something. "What's your name?" Lily blinked. "Lily Marsh." He nodded once, as if filing it. Then he turned to Gary. "See to it that Miss Marsh's brother receives whatever he needs. Full coverage. Tonight." He paused. "Is there a question?" Gary shook his head fast. "No, sir. No question." Luca picked up the last magazine from the floor, Better Homes and August issue, and set it on the table. He looked down at the boy. "You okay, Felix?" Felix nodded, tucking himself slightly behind Luca's arm. Luca put a hand on the back of the boy's head, briefly, the way you touch someone to reassure them without drawing attention to the reassurance. Then he looked at Lily one more time and walked back down the corridor, Felix trailing quietly beside him. Lily sat down. Her legs had decided to stop cooperating. 20 minutes later, a different nurse came out through the double doors to tell her that Tommy had been moved to a private room, that his care had been authorized, and that she was welcome to go see him whenever she was ready. The nurse was smiling. Lily didn't ask how. She was still sitting there, her tea stone cold, when a man in a dark suit appeared at her elbow. Not Gary. Someone else entirely. Younger, quieter, with the specific stillness of someone paid to be invisible. "Mr. Caruso would like a word, Miss Marsh, if you're willing." She looked at the double doors, then at the man in the suit. "Sure," she said. Why not? She was led through a door she hadn't noticed before, down a corridor with better lighting, into a small room that was clearly not a waiting room. It had actual furniture, a table, real chairs, a coffee machine that looked like it had never been used by anyone exhausted. Luca Caruso was standing by the window. Felix was asleep in one of the chairs, his coloring book open across his chest. "Sit, please," Luca said without turning around. Lily sat, he turned. He had 2 cups of coffee and he set one in front of her without asking. She noticed his hands, large, precise, a faint scar along the left knuckle. "Your brother," he said. "Tommy, he's 17. Yes, asthma since he was 9. Your mother's insurance lapsed. Your father isn't in the picture." He said it the way someone reads from a page, not unkindly, just directly. "You work at Carver Elementary as a teacher's aide. You pick up cleaning work on Friday nights. You've been late on rent for 6 weeks. Lily's spine stiffened. "You found all that out. In 20 minutes, my team is efficient. That's one word for it." Something shifted in his face, but the shadow of one. "I'm not trying to alarm you. I'm trying to understand who you are. I'm someone who told an orderly to back off a kid," Lily said. "That's all. That's not nothing." He sat down across from her, cradling his coffee. "Felix doesn't trust people. He hasn't since his mother died. He has been in that waiting room before with people who work for me, people I pay specifically to look after him. And he has never, not once, let any of them stand that close to him." Lily looked at the boy sleeping in the chair. His coloring book had tilted. One page had a half-finished dragon on it, colored with dark, angry blues. "He's a good kid," she said. "You can tell." "He is," Luca agreed. Something in his voice shifted when he said it. Harder to read. "His mother was my sister. She died 14 months ago. Pancreatic cancer, fast. Felix was with her at the end." He looked at his coffee cup. He stopped talking for a while afterward. "He still has bad nights. The doctors call it complicated grief. I call it being 7 years old and watching the only person who kept you safe disappear." Lily didn't say anything. Some things don't need a response. They just need to be sat with. "I've had 3 nannies in 14 months, Luca continued. "The first 2 quit. The third I let go because Felix locked himself in the bathroom every time she came into a room and refused to eat dinner. He can't stand strangers in the house. He can't stand a lot of things. He looked at her, but tonight he stood next to you. He was scared," Lily said. "I was the closest person who wasn't scary. He's been in that situation before," Luca said. "He picks a corner and he waits. He does not move toward people. He paused, he moved toward you." Lily looked down at her coffee. The room was quiet except for Felix's slow breathing. "I have a proposition," Luca said. She looked up. "I need someone in that house who Felix will actually let near him. Someone with patience. Backbone." His eyes met hers. "Someone who doesn't flinch." "I'm a teacher's aide," Lily said. "Not a nanny. You have first aid training. You worked in a pediatric day camp for 2 summers. You have more genuine experience with children in crisis than anyone I've hired, with a resume full of European credentials." A beat. "Also, you looked a man twice your size in the face and told him to back off a child he outweighed by 100 pounds. I don't hire for credentials. I hire for character." Lily was quiet for a moment. "What would the job involve?" "You would live at the house in Evanston. Full room, full board. Your brother's medical care, ongoing, covered completely. Surgeries, specialists, whatever he needs. Your mother's bills, cleared." He said the numbers that followed with the same calm he'd used on everything else. They were not small numbers. "In return, you are there for Felix. You help him learn to trust the world again. You keep him company. You keep him safe. And your business," Lily said carefully. Luca's expression didn't change. "You will see things in that house that have nothing to do with you. People come and go. Conversations you won't be part of. Rooms you won't enter. The rule is simple. What happens in my house stays in my house. And if I see something that—" "You won't," he said. Not a threat. A fact. Lily looked at Felix again. The dragon in his coloring book had no wings yet. She thought about Tommy in his private room on the other side of those double doors, finally breathing without a machine helping him. She thought about 6 weeks of late rent and the specific mathematics of juggling 2 jobs and still coming up short. She thought about her mother, who called every Sunday and tried not to sound worried and never quite managed it. She thought about what it costs to be brave and what it costs not to be. "Okay," she said. Luca extended his hand across the table. His grip was firm, unhesitating. "Welcome to the house, Miss Marsh." The house in Evanston was not what she'd expected, which she realized later was foolish. She hadn't known what to expect. It was large, yes, set back from the road behind an iron fence and a row of old oaks that had been there longer than the house. Inside it was clean, precise, slightly cold in the way that houses get when the people in them are disciplined rather than comfortable. Her room was on the 2nd floor, at the end of the hall from Felix's, overlooking the garden. The bed had a headboard she'd never be able to afford. The closet had actual shelving. She sat on the edge of the mattress that first night and tried to remember the last time she hadn't felt the low-grade hum of financial panic underneath everything else. It wasn't a feeling she trusted. Mrs. Okafor, the housekeeper, greeted her the next morning with the kind of measured civility that said, "I've seen people like you come through here before, and most of them don't last." "Felix doesn't eat before 10, Mrs. Okafor said, handing her a mug of coffee. "He doesn't like loud noises before noon. He will not eat anything orange. Don't ask, we don't know why. He sleeps with a nightlight, but don't turn it on for him. He has to do it himself." "Got it," Lily said. "The last nanny turned it on for him once, trying to be helpful. He didn't sleep for 2 nights. "I won't touch it," Mrs. Okafor studied her. "Mr. Caruso comes home late most nights, sometimes not at all. He checks on Felix when he's here. He doesn't interfere with your routine." She paused. "He's a private man. Don't mistake privacy for indifference. He loves that boy more than anything in this building, including all the things in it that cost more than your car. I understand." "We'll see," Mrs. Okafor said, not unkindly. Felix appeared at the kitchen doorway at 9:57, wearing the same navy sweater with the hole in the elbow, his dark hair still messy from sleep. He stopped when he saw Lily. He didn't run. He didn't retreat. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, evaluating her with the exhausting seriousness that some children develop when the world has given them reason to be careful. Lily didn't say good morning. She didn't smile too wide. She poured a second glass of orange juice, then caught herself and poured it down the sink and poured apple juice instead. She slid it to the far end of the counter. Felix watched her do all of this. Then he walked to the counter and picked up the juice. He didn't say anything, but he sat down at the island, 3 stools away from her, and drank his juice in silence while she finished her coffee. That was the first morning. By the 2nd week, he was 2 stools away. By the 3rd, he had started leaving his coloring books in the kitchen instead of carrying them back to his room. Lily didn't push. She had learned, from years of working with kids who had been through hard things, that trust is not a door you knock on. It's a path you clear slowly and let the other person walk at their own pace. She drew with him, sitting on opposite sides of the coffee table in the front room. She wasn't a great artist, and she told him so, which made him look at her with something that might have been contempt and might have been the beginning of comfort. She narrated her own bad drawings in a dry, matter-of-fact way. "That's supposed to be a horse, but I think it looks more like a footstool with ideas." And one afternoon, without warning, Felix made a sound. A short exhale through his nose. Not quite a laugh. Close enough. She didn't make a big deal of it. She kept drawing her terrible horse. Luca was a shadow in the house. She heard him some nights. The low register of phone calls from behind the study door. The quiet footsteps past her room at 2 in the morning. The coffee machine running before the sun was up. She saw him at breakfast twice in the first 2 weeks, and both times he was already on his phone before he sat down, a focused, contained silence around him like weather. But he watched Felix. She noticed that. He watched his nephew the way people watch things they're afraid of losing. Carefully, from a slight distance, as if looking too directly might invite disaster. One evening, she turned a corner in the hallway and walked into a conversation she wasn't meant to hear. 2 men in the study, door half open. She caught 3 words, a name, a street, a number, and kept walking. She didn't slow down, she didn't look. At breakfast the next morning, Luca was already at the table. "You walked past the study last night," he said without looking up from his phone. "I was getting water," Lily said. And I got water." She poured her coffee. "I didn't hear anything." He looked at her then, a long, assessing look. "Good," he said. She sat down across from him, and they drank their coffee in silence. And after a while, Felix appeared in the doorway in his navy sweater, and Luca's whole face changed. Just for a second, something in the set of his jaw going softer. "Morning, bud," Luca said. Felix sat down and ate his toast without answering, but he sat on the stool closest to Luca, which was not, Lily had been told, something he usually did. She didn't say anything about it. She just finished her coffee. The trouble came on a Thursday in November. She found it because of a routine thing. Felix had left his good coloring pencils in the car, and the driver hadn't come back yet, and he wanted them specifically, not the ones in his room. Lily had gone to the side entrance to wait for the car, and found instead a man she didn't recognize standing in the drive, speaking quietly into a phone. He stopped when he saw her. He said something too fast for her to catch, then slipped the phone into his pocket. "Miss Marsh," he said. His voice was pleasant, his eyes were not. "I was just leaving." She didn't know who he was. She found out later that she probably shouldn't have seen him there at all, and that he had noted her face with the same careful attention she'd given his. That was the first domino. 2 days later, Luca's head of security, a man named Cole, who communicated largely through shoulder position, told her that Felix's school pickup would be handled by the team that week. "Why?" she asked. "Precaution," Cole said. She didn't push, but she started paying attention in a different way, watching the movement of people in and out of the house, the slight increase in the number of men on the property in the evenings, the way Luca's closed-door calls went longer. On a Friday night, she was coming down the back stairs after checking on Felix when she heard it. A door she had never heard open before, opening. She pressed against the wall. Below her, in the narrow service corridor, 2 men carried a third between them. The man in the middle was conscious but not happy about it. There was blood on his shirt. Lily was still. Every nerve in her body ran cold. She did not make a sound. She did not move until they were gone. What she did do was stay up until Luca came through the front door at 1 in the morning and meet him in the kitchen. He stopped when he saw her. "Your hand," she said. He looked down. There was a cut across his right palm, still fresh, the kind you get from something with an edge. He'd wrapped it loosely in what appeared to be a handkerchief, and it was losing the fight. "I have a doctor. He's not here," Lily said. She was already at the cabinet where Mrs. Okafor kept the first aid kit. "Sit down." He sat. He watched her work, running the cut under water, the sharp sizzle of antiseptic that he didn't flinch at, the neat pressure bandage she pulled tight, with the specific attention of someone unused to being taken care of. "You have steady hands," he said. "2 summers running a day camp's medical station," she said. She tied off the bandage and looked up at him. They were closer than usual. The kitchen was quiet. "Luca, I'm in this house. I'm with Felix every day. I need to know, is he safe here?" The question sat in the air between them. "That is the one thing I guarantee," Luca said. "I need more than a guarantee. I need to understand what, Lily." His voice was quiet but absolute. "What you saw tonight is something I cannot explain to you. What I can tell you is that the men who came into this house tonight will not come back, and that Felix will not be touched as long as I am alive." He looked at her hands, still holding the edge of the bandage. "I need you to trust that." "I need a reason to," she said. Something in his expression shifted. "You have been in this house for 3 weeks, he said. In 3 weeks, Felix started eating at the table. He slept through the night 4 times. He laughed. His jaw worked. He hasn't laughed since before his mother got sick. I have people on my payroll who have been trying to reach him for over a year. And you just sat down on the floor next to him and drew a terrible horse." And he laughed. He looked at her steadily. "That is your reason." Lily looked at him for a long moment. "Okay," she said. "Okay. Okay, I trust you." She stood up, gathering the first aid materials. "But if anything changes, if Felix is ever at risk, you tell me. Not Cole, not someone with an earpiece, you." Luca was quiet for a moment. "Agreed," he said. She was almost at the door when he said her name. She stopped. "The man you saw in the drive on Thursday," Luca said carefully. "You should know that he does not work for me." She turned around. His face was very still. "He was here to understand the household," Luca said. "What we do. Who matters to me. A beat. He will have reported back by now." The understanding moved through her slowly, like cold water. "Yes." Lily absorbed this. "So," she said. "What happens now?" There was a charity event, the Calder Foundation Gala, held annually in the grand ballroom of the Langham Hotel downtown. 5 families. A truce in the same way that a held breath is a truce. Luca attended every year because not attending was a different kind of statement. This year, he asked Lily to come with him. "I'm a teacher's aide from Bridgeport," she said. "Tonight you are whoever you choose to be," Luca said. He slid a flat black box across the desk. "Wear this." Inside was addressed the deep green of lake water in December, floor length, silk with a neckline that managed to be both elegant and slightly terrifying. There was a cuff of hammered gold that went with it. She tried it on in her room and looked at herself in the mirror for a long time. She looked like someone who didn't worry about rent. She looked like someone standing next to Luca Caruso was not an accident. In the car, he looked at her once, briefly. "They will try to unsettle you," he said. "They test everything. They will say things designed to make you react. I've dealt with 108-year-olds on a bad day," Lily said. "I can handle a room full of men in suits." Something like amusement crossed his face. Different stakes, same principle. The ballroom was gold and glass, and the particular cold glamour of people with too much money performing ease at each other. When Luca entered with Lily at his side, the room's temperature dropped 2 degrees in a way that had nothing to do with the HVAC. They moved through it together, his hand at the small of her back. A steady pressure that she had decided to interpret as practical rather than personal, and was increasingly failing at. He introduced her as Lily. No last name. The mystery did exactly what he knew it would do. The man found them near the bar. He was shorter than Luca, thick through the neck, wearing a smile like a tool he'd sharpened recently. He was introduced by someone else as Bennett Rowe, but Lily had already placed the name from the fragments of conversation she'd absorbed in the house. He was the reason for the man in the driveway. He was the reason for the blood on Luca's hand. "Caruso," Rowe said, spreading his arms in the performative way of men who have learned that aggression reads better when it's dressed as warmth. "I was wondering if you'd come." "I always come, Bennett," Luca said easily. "Same as you." Rowe's eyes moved to Lily. He looked at her in a way that made her want to take inventory of her own face and hands, check that everything was still where she left it. "And who's this?" he said. "Someone you won't remember in the morning," Lily said pleasantly. Rowe blinked. Luca's hand pressed almost imperceptibly at her back, something between a warning and approval, she couldn't tell which. Rowe smiled thinly. "I was sorry to hear about the trouble at the house last week. These things happen." A deliberate pause. "Families get complicated, complications get resolved," Luca said. "And the boy?" Rowe said, his voice dropping to something that was meant to sound casual and didn't. "Your sister's kid, he's well?" Lily felt the air in Luca's chest change from 6 inches away. "He's perfect," Luca said. Rowe's eyes moved between them. He was calculated happening, the small adjustments behind his face as he tried to find the edge. "Well," Rowe said. "Enjoy your evening?" He looked at Lily one more time. "Both of you?" He moved away, through the crowd. "He was looking for a weak point," Lily said quietly, not moving her expression. "He found one," Luca said, just as quietly. She glanced at him. "You," he said. She absorbed this. They moved through the rest of the room, and Lily understood now what this was. Not a gala, but a map. Every conversation, every nod, every strategic placement in the room was information. She watched Luca work it, and understood that the stillness she'd read as coldness in the house was actually control, a thing he maintained at significant cost because the alternative was more dangerous. She was thinking about this, standing near a column of marble with a glass of water, when she heard a voice at her shoulder. "Miss Marsh." She turned. Gary, the orderly from the hospital. He was in a catering uniform 3 sizes too large, his face gaunt, his eyes the particular brightness of someone who has recently made a decision they know is wrong. "Gary," she said carefully. "You look different," he said, his voice low and trembling. "Different from a teacher's aide making minimum wage, isn't it? Diamonds and silk while some of us lost our jobs." He had lost his job, she had learned, 3 days after the hospital. She had not known that until this moment. "Rowe offered me $10,000, Gary said. Said all I had to do was cause a scene. Take something from Caruso, Gary. Whatever he told you, you made me look like nothing." His voice cracked. It was not rage. It was something sadder than rage. "In front of everyone, you were hurting a child," Lily said, keeping her voice low and steady. "I would do it again." "I know," Gary said, and he lunged. It was not a gun. It was a letter opener. Long, pointed, lifted from somewhere in the hotel. He went for her arm, clumsy with desperation, the kind of motion that has no real plan behind it. Lily had learned, from a man who taught her in a basement over 3 weeks of afternoons, how to step inside an attack instead of away from it. She turned her hip, took his wrist in both hands, and used his own momentum to pull him forward and off balance. He stumbled. She stepped away. The letter opener skittered under a table. It still happened fast enough that half the room saw it. Gary was on his knees. Lily was standing, the green silk somehow unbloodied, her chest heaving. The crack of a single shot came from somewhere across the room. Luca. Gary clutched his shoulder and collapsed, screaming. And then the room became what rooms become when the truce cracks. Noise and movement and everyone simultaneously deciding they were somewhere else. "We need to go," Luca said, at her elbow. "Your phone," Lily said, because it was vibrating in his jacket pocket, buzzing with the specific insistence of something important, and his face when he looked at the screen was the face of a man who has been outmaneuvered. "Felix," was all he said. The drive was 40 minutes, done in 22. The house was dark when they arrived, the front gates forced, 2 of Cole's men on the drive looking like they had lost a war. They went in fast, through the service entrance, up the back stairs, and through Felix's door. The nursery was cold, the window open, the curtains moving. Bennett Rowe was sitting in the reading chair in the corner with Felix in front of him and one arm curved around the boy's small shoulders in a way designed to look protective while being its opposite. Felix was not crying. He was somewhere past crying, still rigid, his dark eyes fixed on the door. When they came in, he looked at Lily. "Here's the thing about complicated families, Caruso," Rowe said pleasantly. "Someone's always got more leverage than they let on." "Let him go," Luca said. His voice had gone somewhere quiet and extremely far from safe. "I don't think so," Rowe said. "I think what happens next is you listen to." "No." Felix's voice was rusty from disuse, thin as a thread, but it was there. He pulled out of Rowe's grip. Sudden, decisive, the move of a child who has decided something. "No. Stop." Rowe froze. In 14 months, the boy hadn't spoken. Everyone in the room knew it. The shock cost Rowe 2 seconds. Lily had already moved. She crossed the room and put herself between Rowe and Felix, one hand pushing the boy behind her. Rowe's weapon was still in his hand. She didn't have one. She had the reading lamp, heavy, ceramic, pulled from the table in one motion, swung at the hand holding the gun with all the strength she had. The gun hit the floor. Rowe lunged for it. He got one hand on it before Luca reached him, and after that it was brief, and it was not gentle, and it was over. Felix had his face pressed into Lily's side, both arms locked around her, shaking hard. She held him with both arms and kept her hand on the back of his head and said nothing. "Because some things you don't talk through, you just stay present for." Luca dropped beside them on the floor, his hands on Felix's shoulders. The boy looked up at him. "You spoke," Luca said. His voice was not steady. Felix looked at him for a moment, then he looked at Lily. "She was scared," Felix said, his voice like something finding its way back. "I didn't want her to be scared alone." Luca made a sound that was not quite a word. He pulled the boy in against him, and then he reached over and took Lily's hand, and the three of them stayed there on the floor of the dark nursery, while the sound of sirens started up somewhere in the distance. Later, much later, when Felix was asleep, genuinely asleep, both arms wrapped around the stuffed bear that had been on the shelf since before his mother died, Luca found Lily in the kitchen. She was sitting at the island with both hands around a mug of tea she hadn't drunk yet, the gold cuff still on her wrist, the green silk exchanged for the old cardigan she'd left on the chair that morning. He sat down across from her, without saying anything for a while. "I'm not leaving," she said. Before he could offer it. "I know," he said, "Felix needs. I know." He looked at her. His face had done something she hadn't seen it do in the weeks she'd been here. It had let go of the performance of stillness and was just a face, tired and real and honest. "I was going to say that I know. That I stopped thinking about asking you to leave approximately 3 weeks ago." She looked at him over her mug. "The man you put yourself between tonight had a gun," Luca said. "I told you when I hired you that your job was to keep Felix safe. That did not include taking a swing at an armed man with a reading lamp." "I know," Lily said. "Do you regret it?" She thought about Felix's arms around her, the crack of his voice after 14 months of silence, the bear on the shelf. "No," she said. Luca was quiet for a moment. Then he reached across the island and tucked a piece of hair back from her face, the simple, certain motion of someone who has already decided something, and decided it a while ago. "You came here to protect a brother," he said. "You ended up with a family." "That wasn't exactly the plan," Lily said. "Plans," Luca said, "are things that happen before life does." He kissed her the way people kiss when there is no longer any point in pretending they aren't going to. Without announcement, without ceremony, with the particular honesty of two people who have been in a burning house together and have stopped finding ways to look away from each other. She kissed him back. Outside, the oaks were bare in the November dark, and the house was finally, for the first time in 14 months, quiet in a way that meant safe. In the morning, Felix came downstairs at 9:57, as he always did, and sat at the island. He looked at Lily, he looked at Luca, he looked at the apple juice already poured and waiting at the far end of the counter. Then he picked up his coloring book, flipped to the dragon with the unfinished wings, and started to color them in. Nobody said anything. Nobody needed to.